Things are about to get significantly worse for Canada. The U.S. ambassador to Canada is pissed because he just visited Canada and realized that Canadians hate America because the Canadian government is saying to hate America. Now, if you're watching this, chances are you are probably not one of those Canadians. I certainly am not one of those Canadians. I love America. I would personally like to see more of an economic merger between Canada and America, joint military bases. It doesn't have to go as far as a 51st state, but it would be nice to be on a dollar that isn't fun little monopoly money like what Canada has. So we're taking a look at just how screwed Canada is. And it's not good, folks. It's really, really, really not good.
Many of the retaliatory counter tariffs Ottawa imposed on U.S. goods earlier this year have now been removed, with very few exceptions. How does the U.S. view this development, and what steps are being taken to prevent future trade disputes between the two countries?
It's number one. It's like, hallelujah. I mean, you guys were tariffing product that fell under the USMCA, okay, CUSMA. So, as I've said, because people said, oh, Pete, you're walking away from USMCA. It's kind of like, I don't think so. We put a carve out around USMCA. It's tariff free, just like it is under the deal. The only people that were tariffing under CUSMA were the Canadians. All right. We were not calling that into question.
In great Canadian fashion, under the umbrella of CUSMA, the tariff-free exemptions, right? Things that cannot be tariffed at all. Canada was imposing tariffs on some of those American goods, which is insane. I mean, it's like having a zone where there's like 100% truce and then breaking that. That's like a huge liability. It shows that Canada is not as nice as what the world thinks it really is.
The big dispute in the president's first term was about paying for NATO. And I would go into groups like this and they'd say, the first question would be, why do you want to quit NATO? And I'm not that bright, okay? And I'd kind of look at him and say, what are you talking about? Well, the president is threatening to leave NATO. And I said, yeah, and the reason is we're trying to figure out what do you know about NATO that we don't that leads you not to pay for NATO? Because the Dutch were down at 1.2%. So, why are you not paying for NATO? We're always paying for NATO, and you're not.
So this is where it gets even worse, because Canada has historically not done a good job at all of contributing to NATO. You might have to zoom in on this really, really hard to find where Canada is, but this is the country's percentage of GDP that is actually going towards NATO. Poland has the highest because, of course, they border Russia. Then it's the United States, and pretty much all the way to the right between Italy and Slovenia, you have Canada at 1.38% of our GDP is actually going to contributions for NATO when the minimum requirement is 2%. And it gets so much worse than that because President Trump just said he's going to increase that 2% marker to either 4 or 5%. And Canada has been just really lagging behind. So what does Canada announce it does? Well, Mark Carney announces an extra $2 billion in spending to boost military pay and benefits this year. And you would think that just on the surface level, this is like an innocent pay raise. Like, hey, troops, you guys have been doing an awesome job. We're going to increase your pay. And I wish it was that simple. But the fact of the matter, to quote a liberal, is that Carney is trying to, well, he actually found a bit of a loophole in the NATO contribution percentage. You see, increasing the pay doesn't give us more resources, doesn't give us more toys or bullets or ammo or guns to play with. It doesn't give us more troops. It just makes sure that the already existing amount, which is not a lot of people, are paid a little bit better, which is something that I agree with. As somebody who's in the military, awesome. Get your money. Every man and woman in the military deserves a pay increase. But what is a little bit disingenuous and very disingenuous, and the loophole around this is the fact that that pay increase gets added to our NATO contribution spending percentage limit thingy. So Canada is not actually adding more to our defenses. We're just increasing how much we pay people. Even when you go to Google and you use the AI chatbot in Google, yes, increased military wages count towards a country's NATO defense contribution, as they are part of the national defense expenditure and contributes to the NATO 2%. National defense spending, NATO's guideline requires members countries to spend at least 2% of their GDP. A significant part of a nation's defense budget goes towards paying its military personnel. When a country increases military wages, it adds to its total defense expenditure. This increased spending helps that country to reach and maintain the 2% NATO benchmark. So even though I agree that we should be increasing our military wages, right, because they are vastly underpaid, what I don't agree with is the fact that that actually counts towards us spending more money for NATO, because we've been trailing behind, which means that we don't have as much equipment. We don't have as many troops as what we actually need to have a proper military in a sovereign country. Remember, Canada needs to maintain its sovereignty with, the elbows up thing. And so what are we doing instead? We're making the book seem like we're actually paying more, contributing more, which we technically are, but it's just a weird loophole that, of course, the banker found a way to exploit. And the scariest part of all this is Trump has actually said, now it wasn't directly said that this was speaking at the time to Governor Justin Trudeau, but a lot of people, including myself, assumed that this was directed towards Canada, where if a country's not paying the bill of, 2% minimum, which is now being increased, then if Russia wanted to invade that country, well, here's what President Trump said at the time.
NATO was busted until I came along. I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. They couldn't believe the answer. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
So yeah, we could be facing a threat of being invaded by another country, which is not America, not under the annexation, but rather under just full-blown military. Now, is this something that we should be worried about on a daily basis? I don't think so, but could it happen? Yeah, it very well could happen. And the more we get into these trade wars, the more we start, trying to elbow our neighbors to the south, our American friends, our American allies, then the worse these tensions are actually going to evolve into.
The thing that was probably, the most unexpected, and we're going to get right into the meat of the stuff that we want to talk about today, okay? I'm disappointed that I came to Canada, a Canada that it is very, very difficult to find Canadians who are passionate about the American-Canadian relationship, okay? You ran a campaign where, it was anti-American, elbows up, me too, it was an anti-American campaign. That has continued. That's disappointing. I talked to a lot of business people. They are passionate about the relationship because they recognize rebuilding ecosystems and rebuilding the kind of economic relationships that we have. As some people talk about, we'll go other places. It's kind of like, that's hard. Plus, this one works pretty well. We've created a lot of prosperity and wealth, high quality, high paying jobs by working together on both sides of the border. Like I said, I'm passionate for it. The business community is passionate for it, but they're not very public about it.
And it really doesn't help that we've got this massive anti-American sentiment that exists in Canada. I mean, it's gross. Like, Canadians are literally booing the national anthem of America. Canadians are actually boycotting American products and refusing to go travel to America, spend money in America, even though they've still got things like Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all of those things. It's selective. It's selective boycotting, which, again, is absolutely ridiculous. And it's fueled by left-wing radical politicians and left-wing radical media. We shouldn't be fighting our neighbors. We should be working together. Yes, the tariffs are unfortunate and they suck, but they've also, there's like an actual tangible reason as to why Canada had been hit with tariffs. And then the retaliatory response from Canada has been, we're just going to try to hurt your economy in every single way and, you know, do very gross and disingenuous things, which has led us to this point now where Canada is vulnerable. Canada is not in a good place, and Canada is at risk of a lot of different things, such as, you know, potential bankruptcy, annexation, fingers crossed, or, you know, if China and Russia, you just want to like hop over the ocean and come see us, that would be really bad because we don't have more troops. We just have higher paid troops.
It seems to us that you've made the decision that NATO's not that critical and you're walking away from it, and you're accusing us of walking away from NATO? That doesn't work. You're accusing us of walking away from USMCA? No. We've got a trade deal. We're sticking to it. And the Canadians, at least for a period of time, for 7 months, were tariffing, as many of you felt, okay? American manufacturers weren't feeling, you know, oh, we've been buying stuff under USMCA and we're now paying a huge tariff. That wasn't happening, but Canadian manufacturers were. But that was a Canadian decision to tariff products falling under. We're thrilled that they are no longer tariffing. It kicks off the review of CUSMA, USMCA, on a much better foot. How do you start, you know, reviewing it and saying the first review, you know, from U.S. companies would have, the comment period that is now open, the first review of what, you know, our view of USMCA is it doesn't work because a whole bunch of the stuff that we're shipping to Canada is now being tariffed.
So there you go. Now you've heard why America is lashing out at Canada and why it's likely to get significantly worse for Canada. That does conclude the video. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye for now.